Hello everybody. Today we're going to look into what it takes to plan your data migration in a mid-size, large-size environment. Okay, so let's go. There are a couple of steps that you need to consider or undertake when you're planning for your CRM data migration. It could be potentially applied to other migrations as well. It doesn't specifically need to be only CRM, but there are a couple of specifics maybe here in the CRM realm. So let's start at the very beginning. You have like a data situation at the moment. Try to really assess the data situation. Maybe I've got multiple data sources that you all want to migrate into your CRM system. Maybe it's like different types of sources, different types of data, and maybe it's located in different areas on premise and in the cloud somewhere and so on. And what does the data quality really look like at the moment? When you creating a list of these, so usually that would work via a mapping would be the first go-to thing here. So you would spin up Excel or better LibreOffice Calc, and then you would just have a list of data fields that you are tracking here, and then you have the data types and you see, do you have to do any conversion or something? So, and if you have this, or at the same time, you could look into your business process as well, because often business processes grow over time and they get a little bit complex. You've got many if-else exceptions inside, which you might not need anymore. Or can you drop a couple of business processes entirely? Because if you have data specifically for these business processes, maybe you can just archive it and not migrate it into the new system, because if you're just polluting the new system with data that you don't need because you're dropping business processes, it doesn't make sense at all. Very important is the integration with other systems. So at the beginning I said it's mostly for mid-sized and large-sized projects, just because smaller projects are much easier, don't have to plan that much. But if you are in a decent size project with your CRM system, maybe you're migrating from CRM to CRM, you already have like an ERP, a CDP, and the data warehouse or whatever, and this all needs to be integrated in your CRM system. You can't just switch over. You need to consider which data streams do you have at the moment, which integrations will you additionally add, and how do they need to work, and how do they need to behave during the go live or the migration phase. Additionally, this is your chance now. So of course there have been processes growing and you have like growing pains and so on. So now look at the pain points, because you potentially migrating to a new CRM system, and there you could just start from scratch. Of course, not completely from scratch, because you've got process, you've got data, and you've got some integrations probably already. But now is the time that you could rethink this, because there's a bigger project coming up anyway with migration here. You need some sort of budget, so why not look into the pain points as well and see what you can improve there. So overall, as you can see, the very first step is to get a big picture of what's your current situation data-wise. The next step is basically based on your strategic goals that you've got in your organization. You want to have some migration goals and or some technical goals here, plus project planning. So probably you got business objectives. So which problems are you really going to solve here? Usually you don't say like, oh, today I would like to migrate my CRM system because the new one is in green and not in blue anymore or something. That doesn't make sense. Usually you see pain points, you see shortcomings of your current CRM system. Most often what I see is there are ERP systems which offer a little bit of CRM functionality, but now you want to go go stronger on sales and marketing, and that just doesn't work in those ERP plus plug-in systems. So therefore you need a dedicated CRM system which can handle your sales and marketing process way better. Or like your customer insights are just not there, the campaigns are not working very well or something. So there are a couple of pain points where you're just maybe hitting limitations, maybe you're just hitting technical limitations in the sense of you need to upgrade, your service is not available anymore, your customer CRM system is not available anymore, or something in the new version, and therefore you have to upgrade, you have to migrate to something else. And yeah, so look to those goals, because if you outline those goals, later on you can decide whether you reach them or not. If you did not have any goals, you basically always reach all goals. So therefore, even if the project completely fails later on, you didn't have any goals, and therefore, yeah, that doesn't make sense in a business context. So maybe, as I said, there's technical requirements in the sense of it's outdated, needs to be upgraded now. Maybe there are some timeline considerations. I had this several times before where a CRM vendor went bankrupt, and there was just a deadline where you had to migrate all the data out of the CRM system, so that can happen. Budget constraints, I see this more often than I expected at the beginning, because people sign up for those really expensive software as a service CRM systems and use them for a year or two or whatever. Then they keep on growing, more users, more processes, more customizations, and then it becomes really, really heavy on the budget, and therefore they want to migrate out of the expensive ones and go into a more budget-friendly version. Maybe I've got success criteria. Some CRMs, as I said, are just like small plugins on an actual ERP system, and therefore you can't do a lot of sales, marketing campaigns, customer service and stuff. Risk tolerance, a little bit about the technical part as well. So if your CRM system is already an old version and it's on premise or something, and then it could be that there's security risk, there's no service anymore from the vendor because there's a new version, you failed to upgrade for the last couple of years. Now is the time that you need to do the migration probably. So as you can see, most of the things are not like, I like this new system or whatever because it looks fancy, but there are real pain points, real business objectives that you could work towards, and you could measure these as well. So, and what do you need to do then in your mapping, or like in your migration actually? So you need to have a data mapping. Remember before, you've got this huge field collection of these are all the different software, Excel sheets, emails and so on, where we get the data from. Now it's time to put it all together in one big sheet and connect it basically so that you can outline, document which field has to go into which, or which value has to go into which field. Then here as well, if you have a faulty architecture from the beginning, then now again, this is your chance to correct the architecture, maybe slightly adjust the existing integrations and build something better, build something more suitable to your nowadays business with the learnings that you had over the last couple of months, years, or however long you used your former systems. And therefore, you need to build this up conceptually inside your new CRM system before you start with a migration. So here, fields, relationships, entities, what do you need? Data transformation rules, very important. So this happens very, very often that there are some validations in one system, which is different from the target system. So now the question is, do you want to implement the validation in both systems? Do you have two different systems with, let's say, phone numbers? One time you're validating them, you have international phone numbers, one time in another system you don't. So what do you do now in the new target system, in the CRM system? Do you want to do them all internationally or not? And what happens with your phone API, with your voice over IP integration and stuff like this if you don't? So therefore, be careful on those data transformation rules and especially validation. So there are different formats of phone numbers, of dates, of names and so on, which could happen to become a problem here. Often what I see is like marketing automation tends to have first name and last name in one field. CRM systems tend to have them in two different fields. So yeah, you have to merge fields and stuff. So you see, this is getting complex. The more fields you have, the more complex, of course. So, and then the next question is, how far back do you want to transfer and what do you want to archive? I mentioned it briefly before. Maybe some parts are not needed anymore. Maybe sometimes you did a migration already 2-3 years back, but the migration was not as clean as you wished. It never was a big problem so far, but now you've got different rules. And maybe now you need to not only access the predecessor system, but even the pre-predecessor system. So it happened as well before, so very complicated. And then, of course, all the legal considerations, if you don't know them, very good, very easy. Let's put it like this, not good, but easy. But if you're in a bigger project context, you most likely know something about GDPR and all the others, where you have to just consider how things are working in your country, in your legal context, what you can do with data and what not. Now, going to the how you would actually deploy or roll out your migration. So there could be that you prepare everything, you test it thoroughly, and then you just say like on a Sunday night, you would completely switch over to the new CRM system and everything is new from Monday morning on. Or you do a phased approach if possible. Usually the phased approach is much more complicated because you have to maintain two systems at the same time. If you have integrations, you need to build up integrations for two systems at the same time. Maybe you have like interfering updates on data records. So usually a big bang is easier, but you need to test thoroughly before doing that. Then are you doing a manual versus automated migration? Of course, there is something in between as well, where you partly migrate some details manually, but most of the stuff automated already. And then how would you do this? Via API, via CSV files, via custom code and so on. That leads me to the next point, tools testing rollback. So what kind of tools you use for the migration? Most of the systems nowadays have an export and import feature, so you could use this. It's potentially very easy. Does this still work with your amount of data that you want to access and import? Could be potentially that it doesn't work because it's just too big of the amount. Testing. Don't do this as an IT project and test in IT. Get your actual users, sales, marketing, customer service to test. Even if it's not complete yet, maybe you can help them to point out what exactly to test. They should be looking into their data because they know the data better than the IT usually. And therefore, testing is very important, especially if you're doing a big bang, like one switch over and finished. If anything happens really big, time problems or whatever, and then how do you do the rollback? Do you have a strategy for this, or does it not work at all? And that leads me to the risk management idea. So how do you manage risk? Probably if you have in a bigger context, you're going through steering meetings, and then you would have some table with a list of risks that come up in discussions or ideas, maybe from top down, bottom up, and so on. So people would tell there's a risk, and then you would just explain in the list of risk where you manage those. How are you going to manage those? How are you going to approach this? How big is the risk? And when is the risk really relevant, and so on. So therefore, it's just like risk management. And then contingency planning in case you need to do something else, in case you need to roll back inside, in case you need to have a backup, then try to have this at least outlined how things are working. As you can see, it usually starts always with like getting an overview of what we have, then kind of define the goals, then look into the details from the learnings from the first step. And then after you have outline the technical or more technical details, then you can go into this one here, because then you've got a very good idea of how you're going to do the migration actually. Yes, at the very beginning you might have a sense of it, but maybe during your research phase, basically there are some points coming up which you didn't know in advance, and you need to change course a little bit. But so far so good. If you have more questions about bigger migrations on CRM systems, contact me. I can help here as well. And yeah, hope it helped, and see you in the next video, I'd say. Okay, bye.